Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tip. Julian here, and this is an episode about 10 draft mistakes that a lot of people tend to make come draft day. Now, I'm super stoked for the preseason to finally be starting. We got that midnight game between Arizona and LA and Melbourne, Australia. That's super cool. Definitely looking forward to staying up and watching that one tonight. I was just in Melbourne a few months ago. It's an awesome city. Definitely recommend it if you ever have the chance to go to Australia. It's going to be a fun one, guys. Now, before we jump into things, guys, I want you to comment your teams that you've already drafted, if you've already drafted, down below, or a mock draft that you've done. I want you to comment that down below in the comments because I'm going to be doing a mock draft or draft review video and probably 2 or 3 draft review videos actually. So definitely something that if you want your team reviewed, definitely go ahead and leave a comment down below because those videos were quite popular last year, so I definitely want to be doing that again. People tend to like that, and it seems to be something that people really take away from as well. So definitely a video that I like to make. So comment down below if you want me to review your team. All right, so no self-endorsement today. Let's jump straight into the content, and let's start with the number 1 mistake that people make. And I got number 1, I have drafting a player simply because he was amazing for you last year. Now, last year was a completely different season. Things change, factors change, line mates change, players move from team to team. I'm not drafting a player only because he was amazing for me last year. If you do that, you may end up really disappointed because conditions can change. So definitely be sure to watch my videos, my ranking videos, and all my other videos on this channel to make sure that if you're drafting a player, he should be going at that ADP that he's going at. Otherwise, you're not getting very good value out of somebody. Make sure to check out my Avoid These Players video for players whose ADP is just too high. The second mistake that people make is taking too many risks in their drafts. You don't want to be drafting a whole bunch of guys who are question marks or are too boom or bust, right? You want guys who are consistent, who are safe picks. Now, I recommend taking 1 risk every 4 rounds or so. That makes sure that you have a pretty safe core players and a few guys who could really break out potentially. Number 3 mistake you can make is drafting drunk. Yes, I know those draft parties can become a lot of fun. You're seeing guys that you haven't seen in a while, and maybe you have 1 too many drinks, and suddenly, oh no, you're not thinking straight, right? You don't want to be doing that, guys. You want to be in your right mind for the draft. Afterwards, go ahead and have as many beers as you like, but not the greatest idea to draft when you're intoxicated. Number 4 mistake is taking 2 natural centers early in your draft. If you've seen my late round draft steals video, you know that there's a lot of really good value natural centers really late in the draft. So yeah, if you're drafting with one of the first 4 picks and you take Matthews or McKinnon or McDavid, obviously you're going to be taking those guys, right? Those guys should be going in the first 4 picks. However, if you're taking one of those and then another guy really early that are both natural centers, in my opinion, that's a mistake because there's some really good value later on in drafts, and you could probably get some pretty good value with right-wing, left-wing defensemen or goalies earlier on in drafts than you could have gotten with that natural center draft. Be sure to pick your second natural center if you're going to pick a second natural center later in the draft. My 5th mistake that you can make is drafting players around ADP only, and on the flip side of that, not following ADP at all. The ADP is there for you to help you, right? It's there so that you can take some guys later on in drafts because generally they're going around that range. Obviously, you don't want to stick only to that, right? Because the guys in your league are also doing research. They might be watching my videos too. You don't know that, right? So if I'm telling someone, oh, maybe you should be reaching for this guy a round or 2 early, it might be a good idea to do that because maybe other guys are watching my videos as well and might have their eye on him before his current ADP. So certain guys like a Mike Matheson perhaps are worth reaching at least a couple rounds early for you because they really are steals this year. Number 6 mistake that you can make, and it's a big one, is not understanding your league's rules. You want to know what categories you have that affect scoring. Do you have hits? Do you have blocks? Do you have plus minus? These things all affect who you're drafting earlier and later in the drafts, right? You're not drafting Tom Wilson super early if you don't have hits in your league. In fact, he probably should be going near the end of your draft if you don't have hits in your league. So just make sure that you adjust for the type of league that you have and you understand your league rules. Seventh mistake that you can make is drafting players with the only intention of making a cool team name. Yes, there's some great team names like I Knew You Were Trouba or Hugh's Your Daddy, two of my favorite teams, but you're not going to be drafting these players early just to make that team name, right? If those players end up falling to you, that's great, but you're not going to be taking them, a round or a few picks early just because you want that cool team name. Don't do that. Pick the best player available to you and then make a team name after the draft. Don't worry too much about naming your team during the draft. That's not something you should be worrying about. Worry about making the best fantasy team you can possibly make. The eighth biggest mistake that you can make is not checking on injuries. Okay, this is a big one because you don't want to be drafting players that are injured. Oh, I thought they were going to be injured only a couple days. Now they're out for a while because you didn't really check on it. On October 3rd or around then, guys, I'll be releasing an injury report video for the start of the year. Most people's drafts are just after that, or should be just after that, right before the start of the season. So definitely be sure to check that injury report video before you go and draft your fantasy hockey team, because that'll be really, really important to know. Number 9 is stacking players on one team. It's not a problem if you draft 1 or 2, sometimes even 3 players from one team. That's not a problem, but the problem is if you start getting even more players from one single team, your team becomes really boom or bust, right? So let's say you draft 3 Boston Bruins for all intents and purposes. Let's say you take Marchand, Pastrnak, and Pavel Zacha. 1 week, maybe all 3 of those players will go absolutely off and have an amazing week, right? Maybe the Bruins are having a super hot streak. That's amazing. They just won your week. But then what happens if the Bruins have an off week? Those guys are going to be really hurting your team, and it's going to be really hard for you to win just because one single team in the NHL is having, kind of a bad streak. And you don't want that. You definitely want to be drafting players from diverse teams. I don't mind 1 or 2 players in the same team, even 3, that's fine. I wouldn't go much more than that, though, because that becomes a little bit more risky. And the number 10 mistake that you can make, this one's not as big, but not taking risks late in your draft. With your last 2 or 3 picks, you might as well take a bit of a risk, right? Unless you're in a super shallow league where there's still really good players available. If you're in a deeper league, guys, there's definitely no reason to take the safe player at the end of your draft. Yeah, he's going to, make a decent floor and, he's going to put up, probably a safe floor, but that safe floor is not really that good anyway. It's definitely much more worth grabbing someone that might have a really big boom or bust potential, but worst case, you drop them, you add someone from the waiver wire anyway. There's going to be great waiver wire players to start the year. I guarantee it. In almost any league, there's a few guys on the waivers that get scooped up really fast because, they came out of nowhere, right? So guys, I definitely recommend drafting guys who are, a little bit more boom or bust towards the end of your draft, because if they do hit, you're going to be feeling really good about yourself. An example this year might be a guy like Thomas Novak, who's slated to play potentially top line or second line in Nashville. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. If you enjoyed the content today, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button. And be sure to leave a comment of your mock draft or already drafted fantasy team down in the comments, because I will review it in a future Rate My Team video. Take care, guys, and have a wonderful weekend. I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.